Ladies and gentlemen, we've got an update on the future of college football in regards to the playoff format. This has been a very hot discussion within the past few years, and I'm sure will be something that's talked about at length in the next few years. We go from the 4-team to the 12-team format. There's been talk, there's been murmurs about switching to the 14-team format where just two teams get auto buys, presumably the Big Ten and the SEC champion. Right now, it seems like that's kind of tabled. The recent stuff I've seen is next year we will still have the 12-team format, so it's going to be the exact same thing for a third straight year next year. And then the question is, they expand. You've got reports with the SEC publicly coming out and saying they would like to see a 16-team format, the Big Ten saying they want to see a 24-team, or at least they're lobbying for a 24-team format. It says in a meeting today in Charlotte, Power Conference commissioners saw a presentation from the Big Ten on a 24-team playoff bracket. And officials agree to keep further exploring format beyond 12. SEC officials have publicly said that they support a 16-team format. You can see the way in which the auto-qualifiers would work. The Big Ten socialized the 24-team concept that would grant 4 auto-qualifiers to each of the Power 4 leagues, 2 to the highest ranked and 2 non-Power League champions, and 6 at-large selections. A 4-4-4-4-2-6 concept. All right, I think it's basically a bunch of at-large spots. It has to be. It's a 24-team playoff. I mean, that's what it is. They're talking about like auto qualifiers in a 24-team playoff. That's funny. But, they're trying to make all these games meaningful. They're trying to add on games to the conference championship weekend that aren't even conference championship games, but they're games that could get you into the playoff if the playoff expands again to whether it's 14, 16, or 24. The conference championships themselves are becoming potentially less meaningful. If you go to a 24-team conference or a 24-team bracket, you can see this format. There is a total of 8 overall buys. And so would conference championships really matter at this point? I mean, you could very likely lose your conference championship and still get a buy and possibly still be a top 4 or top 5 overall seed. But, this is all based off of profit maximization. They want to make more money, and that's just what it is. And we've seen, and I've said that I think the 12-team playoff had to happen because of the amount of players that were sitting out of the so-called most meaningful games, like when the Rose Bowl was not in the playoff rotation. It's just an exhibition and players will sit out. You can't have that. So people get angry. They say there shouldn't be a 12-team playoff because it waters down the regular season. The problem is it's the evolution of college football. Now all these players have agents. They're all making money. They say if it's an exhibition at the end of the season, even if it's one of the biggest games, like a New Year's Six game, if it's not part of the playoff rotation, why would they play in it? You have to make the game meaningful. It's unfortunate, but it's just the reality. So that's why the 12-team playoff kind of had to happen. Maybe you could argue they should have only went to 8, but they had to expand it because the New Year's Six games that weren't part of the rotation were watered down. I mean, remember Ohio State, Missouri? Remember that game? Remember Georgia, FSU? I mean, these games, they're even worse than like preseason NFL games. And so you have to make them more meaningful. Well, now they're saying, let's get more games that are meaningful, and they're going to draw more ratings because technically a 16v17, these two teams are competing for a national title in this first round. A 9v24, a 13v20, a 21v12, 18v15. I mean, all these teams technically are saying, well, we could go on a Cinderella run and win a national title. So it's just adding more inventory in terms of games that technically could be, these teams competing for a national title. They're in the playoff. The 24-team playoff. Now, this is what the Big Ten wants. The Big Ten's been extremely money hungry. They've got the number 1 TV rights deal, better than the SEC. Now they want private equity, a $2.4 billion investment with Michigan and USC holding that up. And now they're pitching a 24-team playoff, more inventory for college football. And, the other thing is people are like, well, there's going to be like 5 of the spots have to go to SEC teams or 5 of the spots have to go to big. None of that even matters. I mean, obviously, if it's a 24-team playoff, there's going to be like 7 or 8 SEC teams that make it. That's just the reality of the conference. They don't need to be given like 6 spots as lockdown That's just like they're already going to be there because the conference is deep. The Big Ten is going to get 5 or 6 spots at least as well because of how, the fact that the Big Ten has premier college football teams and there's a lot of them that finish inside the top 25. It's just a product of how deep the conference is. Obviously, the Big Ten and the SEC are significantly better than the Big 12 and the ACC. And part of that is due to realignment. Part of that is due to just the powers that are in the conferences and the blue blood. So, I don't think there needs to really be. They always get into arguments about, well, the SEC should have like 6 auto spot. I mean, there's already going to be 6 SEC teams that make it anyways, whether or not they get auto qualifiers or whatever. It doesn't even make sense. I don't know why they always hang up on that. But I guess that's part of like the lore of or the attractiveness of being in a conference, I guess. But yeah, so that's basically it. I mean, who knows what they're going to do? I think they're going to expand it again. I'm surprised they haven't gone. They're really not discussing a 14-team format, because to me, a 14-team format, you could argue, would make sense. If you look at what's happening with Ohio State and Indiana, they're probably both going to be 12-0. Now, maybe not. Ohio State has injuries now. Maybe they'll lose to Michigan. But let's just say they're both 12-0. The game in Indianapolis, it's not completely meaningless because you want to get the number 1 overall seed, but you're talking about the number 1 seed versus the number 3 seed. The winner likely will be the number 1 overall seed. They're going to have a first-round bye. The loser will likely be the number 3 overall seed. They're going to have a first-round bye as well. So that's the issue. The 14-team format, if it is what I think it is, would make it to where only 2 teams get the auto buys, which would be the Big Ten and the SEC championship. It basically makes those championships meaningful. The ACC and the Big 12 championship are already meaningful because the conferences are not as deep, and the loser is fighting to even be in the playoff at that point. That's why you want to win those leagues. But the Big Ten and the SEC, it's like the leagues are deep enough to where if Ohio State loses to Indiana, they're still going to be in the playoff. Not only are they still going to be in the playoff, they're going to get a first-round bye in a 12-team format because they changed it to where the 4 buys, you don't have to win your conference to get a bye, which was the right move because the conferences are not even close to being equal in terms of overall talent and overall just how good the teams are. So they had to change that. But yeah, I mean, obviously it's all profit incentive and they're going to be expanding it again. It's interesting. The SEC wants a 16-team format, so there'd be no buys. And it would basically, I think, just operate in terms of, or would they maybe have 4 buys in that form? No, I don't think you can have 4 buys in a 16-team format. I think it would just be 16v1, 15v2, 14v3, like a quadrant of March Madness maybe, unless they like really changed the format to something else. I think that's how they would have to do it. Imagine they go to 24 teams and then have more inventory to where they add games on conference championship weekend. I mean, that would be, I'm not even sure how they would do that though, because at that point it's like the entire top 25, the entire AP top 25 is making the playoff, which, I mean, you could say it ruins the nature of the sport. So much of college football was high emphasis on regular season games. And so, you go to 25 teams, that destroys it. And it just becomes kind of a playoff thing, kind of like the NBA is. The NBA regular season has been eroded into nothing. And the NFL, I mean, they have a decent amount of playoff teams, but it does become a thing to where it's like, if it is a 24-team format, it's just about getting one of those top 8 seeds so you can get that first round bye. And, yeah, I think for them it would be smarter to go to a 14-team format and have more exclusivity with only the 2 buys. Like the number 1 and number 2 seeds are the only ones that get buys if they wanted to expand it. Or they could go 16-team where nobody gets a bye. I guess that's what the SEC wants. They don't want to get exaggerated out to a 24-team conference or a 24-team playoff. But I just think in general it's all lunacy and the furthest they should go is a 14-team, but I think probably staying at 12 would be best. But I mean, it's whatever. They're going to do whatever makes them the most money and whatever is most realistic for them. And they want as many games meaningful as possible, right? Because a bowl game of Tennessee versus Virginia, just like an exhibition between 2 teams that have like 3 or 4 losses, nobody really cares. But now if they're fighting for a spot to face Ohio State, that game is inevitably going to be more attractive in terms of a TV rating aspect. So That's basically why they would want to do that. I mean, you're just adding more inventory in terms of games that are potentially meaningful. You want to add more meaningful games because unfortunately these bowl games at the end of the season, they're just viewed as exhibitions like I was saying earlier. So, that's basically it, guys. So, we'll have to see. Seems like the Big 10 is pushing for a 24 team format. The SEC is pushing for a 16 team format. They've come out in support of it. 16 team format, I presumably would have no buys. 24 team format, you might have 8 buys. The FCS has a 24 team format. Would they try and copy an FCS type deal? And then you also do have the fact that the 12 team format will be remaining next year as well, with the deadline happening on the 1st of next month. It doesn't seem like there's any real talks to expand to a 14 team playoff next year. So the 12 team will be remaining through the end of next year. And then I think we would get the expansion, whether it's 14, 16, or 24. Probably 14 or 16, but I mean, the Big Ten is lobbying for 24, and there is a financial incentive in doing it, so we'll have to see. But either way, guys, it is going to do it for this video. Make sure you like the video down below. Also, follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.